meeting, city council meeting. Hey. City council. Oh, well. 20 years from now, what happened to Dallas? They'll get drunk at the city county meeting.
I won't be here like that. I'll be over 20 years.
Dallas will be that big. We'll start building right up the sides of the mountains again. Be on stilts. We get to the mountain, put a house. That's what they're doing now. That was Dallas Fort. We're building right into the Dallas Fort.
Take me out of town. Well, out on Verdant, that way was county. On the left hand side, on the right hand side, they annexed all that. The town of Lewis wasn't too happy. Annexed you again. Would you guys some bacon? What do you tell me? You were taking meeting, running church this morning. Running. Oh.
This has changed, you know. Yeah, maybe the last, maybe you know, but maybe. I can get this thing. Change right now, or. Yeah.
Right.
What are you doing? Good. How about yourself?
Good. This is just a final comment that came in.
All right.
Yeah.
Final comment that came in today.
Hey.
Yesterday, Wednesday. We'll go over a little bit more.
Northern side, or the southern side. You got hers, you going up pretty big. My, or the next guy, this is right there on the side, you know. We're on the street. We're in the, when we leave, when we go, they go out there. Gotta take care of it. Yeah, well, half of it's on the property, the other half is, so I see.
I'm gonna write down. What's on our plate.
What happened?
And you have to like the outside. Yeah, it's kind of electric.
All of this. Portland, 6 years ago. They're filming it. There's a report meeting. Happened was the sergeant, the law sergeant, started doing anything, and started to talk. Keep it, just shut the building down, right, so it doesn't. That's not what we, just shut it off right there.
Or is that?
What's that big of a video? What happened?
Might see.
Yeah.
The last. Oh. I should do that. I don't know. Yeah, and I responded to you because I was like, oh, geez, I would have like this. I guess I'll be there. I'm not worried. Don't know if I should be. Maybe I should be worried.
All right. Good meeting.
I didn't get it. It might have been our amazing spam email. Huh? Yeah, you got a copy of them in.
So I need to.
Okay.
I don't know what to do now. People like Maria.
Excuse me. We're gonna be starting at. I don't know if any of you want copies of the agenda. There are some copies out there and I can make one if you need them. There might be more. I have about half a dozen copies of the exhibit for the RV park. And if you, there are two exhibits in that with the amendments. There's the red line copy and the finalized copy. So they're here if you want them.
Can't speak to it, no doubt. So. Yeah. About this.
Public comment very first. Right on you. Before we start these items down here below.
Anyone else want to attend that?
I don't know, I don't want to say.
Yeah. Yeah, that's- the second meeting. Yes. What is it about?
So at this meeting, the planning commission decides whether or not they want to recommend to city council adopt them. Whether to post the amendments. If they don't like the amendments, then they'll find a comment for the city council, and then they decide to, implement them, they change them. And then at a later date, submit or recommend to city council, so it's actually correct as how to take place. It has to be a vote by the planning commission or some kind of.
Talking about more specific on the property, this is only general law, where they can go and.
Probably about the process for supervisors.
I had to do the same thing. I had to find my name.
Who am I?
Who am I today? Oh, okay. Thank you.
I got this.
Hi, everyone.
Maria comes from above.
Did I freak you out?
Yeah, you totally did. I was like, where did that come from? Just Maria out of nowhere.
Hey, sorry I can't be there today, but my mom had a really freak out accident and I have to watch her, so I couldn't get away.
I'm glad you could be there to take care of her.
Yeah, me too.
Looks like you're the one who's the whole-
I was like, I should have been warned. I mean, nervous there.
Hey, Cody.
All right, good evening. I call this planning commission meeting to order July 20th, 5:30 PM. Paulo, may we please have the roll call?
Patty Case.
Here.
Betty Cornett,
Here.
John Grant. Philip Mosher is absent. Maria Pena. Maria, you're muted. Mark Popoff
Here.
and Nick Portella.
Excellent. The pledge of allegiance, please.
Hat off. You. Get your hat off. Yes, thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Approval of the agenda, please. If all the commissioners have had a chance to,
Excuse me.
excuse us. This is happening up here. When you're ready to talk, you'll come to the podium. Thanks. Approval of the agenda. If all the commissioners have had a chance to review the agenda, may we please have a motion to approve?
I motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor of approving the agenda as written, raise your right hand, say aye.
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 Hi.
Chair Cornett.
Yes.
Me too. Good, and I missed who the second was.
No, it was. Yeah. All good, Paula?
Same.
Okay, approval of the minutes from the April 20th meeting. If all have reviewed the minutes from that meeting, may I please have a motion to approve and a second?
I move to approve the minutes from April 20th.
I second.
Excellent. That has been motion to approve and seconded. All in favor of approving the minutes from the April 20th meeting, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Hi.
Now is the time for public comment. During this portion of the meeting, anyone may speak on any subject that does not later appear in the agenda. 5 minutes per person will be allowed. So we have a lot of public here. That's great. We love that. If you are here to comment on anything that's later in the agenda, like the code amendments or the RV park, now is not the time for that. You'll have a time later for that. This is for anything that's not on the agenda. Sure. When you come up, please sit down, state your name and address to the record, and then you'll have 5 minutes.
My name's Kent Kramer.
Okay.
And I'm a retired cavalry scout for the United States Army.
Okay.
And I'm not too happy with this guy not taking his hat off while he's in this building, let alone at the flag.
Okay.
So he should be just like you. When you came in, you took your hat off. He should too.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Mr. Kramer, I need your address.
2628 West 10th Street.
You.
Okay. Anyone else?
Green, Dalles, Oregon,
Sure. What's your address?
3038 Old Duffer Road.
Okay.
I don't know if you have something to do with the, the motor inn coming in, the planning and stuff that's been done with that, or
Do not.
you do not. Why would the city not have anything to do with that planning?
Well, the city certainly does, but it is not coming to the planning commission.
You're not in any way involved over the decisions or things that are being made with that.
No, that goes, so anything that, okay. So what the planning commission does is we have our zoning codes and our zoning ordinances, right? Certain things are allowed within those zoning codes that the planning department just handles. Okay. It's called ministerial action or ministerial approval. When things require a conditional use permit, or if someone challenges something that's happening at the planning department and says, hey, I want the planning commission to hear about that, or we want it to be approved by the planning commission or denied by the planning commission, whatever, then it's escalated to us. So only if there's things in the ordinances that cause it to be escalated to the planning commission, or if someone specifically requests it, then it comes to us. So we don't handle everything. A lot of that stuff happens just within the planning department itself.
I just wondered, it's just such a, I haven't heard much about it or seen much about it other than having someone I'm caring for waiting to go in, and yet hearing folks are coming in from Portland, and I see more people sitting on the streets, and that they're gonna close the other shop, the temporary down there, move those people over to that, yet they've been in there for 6 months already, and the rule is 6 months limit.
Mhm.
So my question was, why do they get to move from there over to the new place when all these other people are still waiting to have a place to go into? It looks like if you've made your 6 months over there in the shelter, you shouldn't be allowed to move over to the next higher up part, because then where are the others going? I just didn't know where or who to take those questions to.
I can answer that. So that project you're referring to is the former Oregon Motor Motel. The project name is, well, now the Annex, and the Mid-Columbia Community Action Council runs that. I would direct all your questions to them. Yep. They would be able to get you a better idea than we can provide. Information we do not have, actually.
All right, thank you very
Yep.
much.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comment things for things down the agenda? Yes, sir.
Excuse, come up.
RV park, so this is in general, but this RV park is already going through.
Wait, I need your name and address.
Michael J. Wilson, 2436 West 10th Street.
Hmm.
The RV park is already going through. I'm here to find out more about getting a stack of paperwork, finding more about taxes. What would do anything to do with taxes, anything to do with zoning, or anything to do with RV parks versus apartments or houses going in. Just even a little bit more specifically with what I live next to the place where there's gonna be an RV park. Is there any way I can get the stack of paper and find out?
Sure. Sure. So you can direct that.
I can handle that.
Okay.
As I mentioned before the meeting,
Is there a stack of paper?
not a stack of paper. When you have questions regarding taxes, you can go to the Wasco County Tax Assessment
On
Office.
zoning, who do I go to on
Zoning
zoning?
is the planning department, the department that approved that application. It was in front of the planning commission, I don't know, 8 months ago, maybe. He's talking of the RV park that's between 10th and 13th.
Right, it's already been.
We can provide
I
a
can
set
do
of plans.
that.
We can provide you the,
Change the neighborhood.
yes, and there was a comment period, and we did hear, definitely some frustrations from the approval of that. It was permitted in the zone. It followed the requirements of the zone. It was approved by the planning commission, but we definitely heard, or the planning commission heard, the frustration in the neighborhood of the placement of
I
that
don't
unit.
care about having an RV park.
I'm just trying to explain to you where we're at. And we don't have that big stack of paper. I'm trying to explain to you where we're at here. So there was an opportunity to speak before that meeting. There was an opportunity to attend that meeting. That meeting was notified within properties of 300 feet. So that is kind of in the past now. It's approved. We haven't seen any more movement going forward with it. I'm not sure where it stands, whether or not they or moving forward.
Way to get paperwork, find out about the zoning, the taxes and.
Yes, and that's information taxes, no. You would go to the Wasco County Tax Assessment Office to get information regarding taxes. Zoning, you can come to our office and we can answer.
It will affect taxes, have an RV park and residential, whether it's zoned that way or not.
And I would maybe refer that to the Wasco County Tax Assessment Office.
I'm dealing with something specific. That's not my problem. It's not your problem.
Yeah, no, and feel free to stop by our office. We're more than happy to help. We can provide you with the plans. We can provide you with the requirements, the notice of decision that was approved by the planning commission. Like I said, we heard the concerns, and I mean, this is a good segue, dovetail into why we're here this evening. We heard the concerns of the neighborhood of placing an RV park in a residential neighborhood. And it was the direction of the planning commission to remove RV parks from residential zones. So they can't, going forward, RV parks, if we go forward with this plan.
I can find out more about what's happening with the place and what's gonna happen in the future. As I look for a stack of papers.
Feel free to stop by anytime and I can fill you with all the information that we have. And I'll let you know that once something is approved by the planning commission or by our office, it's out of our control regarding the timeline of when something is actually built. So a lot of times people come to find out if the project's even feasible. They can get land use approval to figure out if they're going to go forward with it. But there's a whole process associated with actually building it out. And the thing with that approval is that approval actually has a timeline from the day it was originally approved. So if the developers do not act on building it, then it actually expires and the use goes away. So that is one thing for the developers to consider, that if they want to move that thing to the next step and actually build it, they need to be reaching out to us, submitting documentation to get that process going.
Extra RV park.
I hear you.
I just,
Yep.
I want to know what's going on about everything.
Yep. Feel free, stop by. Yeah.
Have to go, well, that's actually up to Chair Cornett.
Yeah, is it more regarding what's happening on the corner?
My question was, I'm not familiar with you guys are.
Okay. Yeah, come on up. And you gotta state your name again and,
8 Old Duke Road.
okay.
That everybody here is from the Dalles or something, or you're. My question is, why, Nick, why would you be up there on that council? Didn't know like this.
I don't think we need to have these personal,
Or-
we're not having personal questions towards the planning commissioner's views. We're not having those
Say the
conversations.
Pledge allegiance to
We
the
are
flag.
not having those conversations.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Excuse me. Pardon
You're
me.
Denying my freedom of
Pardon
speech
me.
to ask.
The attorney will
Hi,
take it
pardon
over
me.
from here.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi, Miss, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. I'm speaking to you from Zoom. Can you please tell me your name? I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
It's also up here. It's
I'm
the
just
city
watching-
attorney.
Hi.
Uh.
Hi, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Can you please come back, have a seat, please? If you'd like to speak, I'm not gonna tell you not to. More than willing to
I was
offer you
just
an opportunity.
curious why somebody that would be on the committee going to turn and do the pledge. I mean, maybe you don't know it. Maybe you're new enough that you don't know it.
Sure.
When
I don't
see
want to,
that, I'm thinking that it's like the guys that kneel in the football game when the, Star Spangled Banner's on. Be on a
Sure.
committee like this if you don't feel you're part of, to say your pledge or what.
Okay.
Chair
You don't have-
Cornett?
You don't have
Sure,
to answer that.
Cornett?
Oh, no, I'm not going to.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Thank you so
I'm-
much.
yeah.
This is not,
You are a citizen, right?
excuse me, that is,
You can.
Well, no,
That-
I don't know.
that's an inappropriate question.
What is?
It is.
inappropriate.
And this is not the kind of place where we're going to have those discussions. We have an agenda here that we need to take care of. If you have a personal issue, that's something you need to take care of, not on this public time. Okay?
Right, that's fine. I just.
Thank you.
was curious. I've never seen anything like that at a meeting. Okay.
Thank you so much. Yes, please.
That's right. 1012 East 10th Street.
Can you spell your last name?
REITZ. Just have a few, just one quick question, and I would advise that you take your hat off in the future. Just, I know I'm not going to go into it.
Yeah, there won't be any more discussion on that
But
topic.
What I would like to know is there going to be a transcript available to us of this meeting today?
Yes, always. And it's being publicly recorded right now. So you can go on YouTube and see it again
Okay. Through the planning commission site, through the city site?
on YouTube.
I'm new to this.
Yeah, so you could just
Yes.
type in YouTube, City of the Dalles Planning Commission, July 20th, and we'll all be here.
That's all.
Chair Cornett?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You want- Chair
Yes.
Cornett, I just want to mention, no, there will not be a transcript. There will be recorded minutes of the meeting. If you would like a transcript, word for word, verbatim, your best bet is going to be to enable closed captions on YouTube, on the city's YouTube channel, which will auto-generate transcripts. But no, the city will not be preparing a transcript of tonight's meeting. After every public meeting, the city, including planning commission meetings, the city prepares a record of the minutes, which captures the substance of the meeting, but it is not a word for word transcription.
Understood.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay.
You're very
Thank you
welcome.
for the clarification. I saw one more hand in the back for the public comment. Yes, please come on up, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Nora Ray, 826 Cascade Street West,
Is that WRAY?
REA.
REA. Sorry, thank you.
You're welcome. I was curious of how I would go about finding out what's going on with the old D Harts Market. What's gonna go in there?
The old D Harts Market.
Yes, on Chenoweth Loop.
It'd be next to the transit center.
Yeah. I don't know. And I think if you were to find anything out, that would also come from you can go talk to Josh or Caitlin at the planning department.
Okay, okay. I talked to the owner that was selling the property. First, I talked to the gentleman that was trying to buy the property.
Mhm.
And I didn't get along with either one of them.
Yeah. So if you want to know anything formal, what's happening with a property, the planning department will be able to help out with those questions. But of course, a lot of times people's intentions change. So they can have an idea, here we go, we're going to do this application. But then they'll say like, you know what, that's not what we're going to do. And
They
things
didn't
change.
really go about it the right way. The buyer sent certified letters out portraying he was the owner.
Oh, well, that is unusual.
Yes. And then when he called and he saved myself and my husband last because the easement, the city easement is right on the other side of our back fence.
Hmm.
And I asked some questions. He couldn't really answer my questions. So I said, have the owner call me because I don't really appreciate you portraying that you're the owner when you're not.
Got it.
So
Yeah.
then the owner called me. He couldn't answer my questions. So I didn't even get into what you're going to build.
Yeah.
And I
So
could provide a brief update if you'd like.
Okay,
Chair
great.
Cornett.
Please do.
So it has not moved forward with any type of formal proposal whatsoever. Application hasn't even been submitted. There was a discussion on a development happening there. December 2021, I think is when we've really last heard of it moving forward. I believe that Joel Madsen, the executive director of the Housing Corp, might be able to provide you more of an update. I think he may be involved with the group that's looking to develop it. So they might have more of an answer there for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
you're welcome. All right. Any other public comment or anything? All right. We're going to keep on moving. I'm going to say something first. Everyone just take a minute. Remember why we're here. The 5 people that are up here and Maria, who is on the Zoom call, we all volunteer our time. We all belong to the Dalles. We're here to make good decisions for the best of the community. And we respect where we lived, and we want that respect coming back at us, right? We all have jobs. We're up here every time this happens, volunteering our time, trying for the greater cause. So let's maintain a level of respect, nothing personal, no accusations, nothing like that. All right. Okay. Public hearings. Bear with me while I read this. Now is the time specified for the Planning Commission to conduct a public hearing. The purpose of this public hearing is to consider the following matter. Consideration of zoning ordinance amendment application 108-23 to amend the Dalles Municipal Code Title 10 Land Use and Development. The amendment purpose is to provide clear and objective terminology, update review timelines, adapt to modern technology, add childcare centers as a permitted use in a variety of zones, and reorganize portion of Title 10 Land Use and Development. The substantive criteria upon which the planning commission will base its decision in this matter are contained in the Dallas Municipal Code, section 10.3.020.060, Article 3.110, and the Dallas Comprehensive Land Use Plan. The public hearing is required by law and certain rules apply. First and foremost, you must be recognized by the chair in order to speak and present testimony. When recognized by the chair, please proceed to the microphone and state your name and mailing address for the record. The hearing is required by law to be recorded. Generally, the public hearing procedure is as follows. Prior to the public hearing, a determination will be made of the qualifications of the commission members and allow for challenges from the audience. I will open the public hearing with a staff report. The purpose of the staff report at this time is to further identify the applicable criteria of the case being considered and to provide background information about that case. After the staff report, we will hear testimony from the applicant. Next, there will be testimony from the proponents, those in favor of the application. Next, there will be testimony from the opponents, those not in favor of the application. Next, there will be testimony from anyone else who wishes to offer testimony or ask questions. Then, to honor the right of rebuttal, we will again hear from those in favor of the application. To expedite the hearing, the commission members may ask questions of persons as they testify. When this process has been concluded, we will close the public testimony portion of the hearing. During the hearing, some important standards apply. First, those who testify must hold their testimony to the decision criteria. As in all land use hearings, there are a complete set of rules, procedures, and criteria we must follow. Second, failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commission members and the parties an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Third, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with details specific enough to allow the city to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in the circuit court. Fourth, prior to the conclusion of the public hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence, arguments, or testimony regarding the application. If such a request is made, the law states the commission must grant the request by either continuing the hearing at a time and date at least 7 days from the date of the initial hearing, or the record must be kept open for a period of at least 7 days. These are the rules. Are there any questions? Okay. Have the members of the commission had any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, or bias which would prevent you from rendering any impartial decision on this matter? No?
No.
No. No. Maria?
Nope.
No. Does anyone in the audience wish to challenge the qualifications of any members of the commission? Okay. The public hearing is now open. May we please have the staff report?
Sure thing. Just a moment while I get it up and running. All right, planning commissioners, it may seem like you've seen this code amendments before, and spoiler alert, you have, except this time it's with a couple of different changes. So this zoning ordinance amendment aims to provide clear and objective terminology, amend review procedures, amend entrance standards, and address childcare centers and defining what a temporary intermodal container really means in our code. This is identified to staff as being some important things to add to our code amendments list this time around, because, we've had either heard community need or have had some code enforcement issues. And these address some of those concerns. So some examples of the terminology changes that we are proposing are changing ambiguous terms such as planning actions to administrative, which clearly outlines what type of review procedure will follow. In addition, instead of, saying residential areas, which can be rather ambiguous, we change that to zones, which again, just really targets down what exactly we're talking about, less ambiguity, easier to move forward with making, with decisions. We have updated, some of our terminology because we have more advanced technology. So instead of creating all of these paper copies, we really just want an electronic copy of the plans, and this allows for a higher resolution of the plans and for us to basically perform our jobs better. Some review procedures are changing. For an example, on administrative actions, we are striking the time limit. So originally it said all applications processed as administrative actions shall be approved with conditions, denied or postponed with the consent of the applicant within 45 days after filing a complete application. This is not required per state code. And so we are, amending it to, just striking that out. And then the state code requires 120 days. And so it'll default to the state code. We'll still follow all of our planning procedures. This does allow for a little more cushion if we do have to get the application appealed or go to planning commission, because as you can imagine, that really extends the timeline out quite a bit. And that 45-day timeline with all the noticing that goes into it is pretty hard to achieve. A couple of other things, we are amending some development standards for building orientation. So this gives a little bit more flexibility for entrance standards. So the proposed amendments include provisions promoting flexibility of building orientation and entrance standards. These revised standards allow primary entries to be located on the front and side yard, on the front and side building faces, while preserving neighborhood characteristics with a pedestrian access from the street or sidewalk. And basically these amendments allow for greater flexibility and housing options for folks, especially on the Dalles narrow lots where it can be hard to fit a front door right on the front building face. For childcare centers, we are striking them as a conditional use. So we're moving them as a permitted use in each zone, and this is in order to comply with Oregon House Bill 3109. So this is to be compliant with state standards. So intermodal cargo containers are those like metal shipping containers that you can find around town. So in our code, it's a little ambiguous. This is what it currently states right now. So intermodal cargo containers are allowed in temporarily in all zones without having to comply with subsection B of the section. So what staff is proposing to change is that intermodal cargo containers are allowed for a maximum duration of 30 days, which would define temporarily in all zones. And then intermodal cargo containers are exempt from this section. So that, again, removes ambiguity and allows the planning department to review applications with less questions, less head scratching. So a couple of things is we look at how these amendments comply with our comprehensive plan goals. So the first one is citizen involvement, and this one really touches on how we do our noticing, and we followed the Dalles Municipal Code noticing requirements by publishing it in the local newspaper more than 10 days prior to the original meeting date. We noticed public hearings was sent to all news media, Wasco County Planning, and posted on the city's website. And then these meetings are open to the public as well. And we also submitted our proposed amendments to the Department of Land Conservation and Development, meeting that goal 1 requirement. For goal 2, land use planning, it touches on the proposed amendments implementation process is consistent with the legislative application process outlined in the code and follows proper noticing requirements. So these amendments encourage to have more administrative approval by removing ambiguity and discretionary language in our code. So it meets that goal 2 land use planning requirement. Goal 10 touches on housing, and why this is brought up with these amendments is that it gives a little bit more flexibility for certain housing types. So, we do have quite a bit of narrow lots in the Dalles. So by having a little bit more flexibility with our entrance standards, by letting it be connected to the right of way via pedestrian walkway rather than having the front door face the street, it allows for our houses to, maybe if it's for example, a manufactured home, right? You can have the front door on the side, but allow a porch and a pedestrian entrance, pedestrian pathway to that street that it faces. And so, yeah, right. So that's how it complies with the comprehensive plan goals. And then we have our Oregon Revised Statute ORS 197. So the proposed amendments aim to remove ambiguous and inconsistent terminology relating to housing, which meets this requirement. And we will be talking a little bit about this later as well. So that concludes, the Oregon Revised Statute 197-307-4 talks about the clear and objective standards, pardon me. So that was just a double slide. But anyways, that concludes the staff presentation. Do you all have any questions for me that I can answer at this point?
I do not.
Okay.
Any questions from anyone?
No.
No questions. Oh, did we just lose our audience? Or Zoomers?
Oh,
We got
I
it.
can stop sharing.
Okay. We have no questions for the staff. Does the applicant, the staff, wish to present any information about the proposal? Guessing no. Or do you have any other additions? All right. Does anyone wish to testify in favor of the application? So, Caitlin just read through these various zoning ordinance changes. Does anyone have any comments about those? Anything like that? Proponents? Okay. Does anyone wish to testify in opposition to the application? Any of these zoning ordinances sound no good to anybody? Any comments? Okay, sure. When you come on up, please state your name and address for the record.
Kramer, 2628 West 10th Street, The Dalles, Oregon, 97058. I need to know if I'm in the city or the county. I have no idea, Verdant and 10th Street. I'm getting city planning, but I don't know if I'm in the city. You guys annexed all that area over down lower, the island basically. But I have never been annexed in.
Yeah, we can double check whether or not you've been annexed. The city oversees all planning practices, anything planning, land use that occurs in the urban growth boundary. So you are for sure in the urban growth boundary, being at 10th and Verdant. I mean, we could verify on our end whether or not you've been annexed in. That'd be a pretty simple request on our end, no problem. But yeah, you are receiving that because the city has a joint management agreement with Wasco County. That was established in the 80s, and that joint management agreement gives the city the authority to apply zoning standards to anything within the urban growth boundary. It's a little different than some communities. Some communities, the city's planning department only oversees city actions. So this gives us the ability to oversee it, take the burden off of Wasco County for needing to oversee them. So that's why you are receiving that. You're in the county, or you may be outside city limits, but you have ultimately city zoning attached to your
I know
property.
the city police won't come to my door.
Correct. That would be an annexation. When
They'll go across the street, but they won't come to me.
Yeah,
The sheriff has to come to me.
Yeah, and that's a city limit. That's a city limit thing that we're talking there.
So I don't need to be here.
Well, and there's also a really great resource online. If you are so inclined, we do have a city zoning map on the City of the Dalles website. Just look up the Community Development Department at the City of the Dalles, and it should be one of those blue markers saying City of the Dalles zoning map. And that's going to really help you figure out what your zoning is, if you're in the urban growth boundary or city limits, and more information if you want.
Okay.
Super fun. It is fun.
We're planning fun. Anyone else? All right. Does anyone wish to testify that are not in favor of opposition or would just like to ask questions? That last one kind of fell into this category. Okay. Do the commissioners feel they have enough information to make a decision?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Are we ready for deliberations? Excellent. The public hearing is now closed. If any of the commissioners have any comments, want to review the recommendations from staff on this, or if you're just ready to move forward, please feel free to make a motion on one of those staff recommendations and a second if someone agrees.
I have a comment about the time limit on the containers. Those are quite often used around construction sites, and 30 days really isn't long enough to get anything built these days. I think I would extend that to 1 year.
Okay, bear with me. What page is this on?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. I'm not sure. It was just up on the screen, so
What page is the container thing on?
It is page 53. Oh, are you looking for where it is and the red lines?
Yeah, no, got it. Intermodal cargo containers.
Yeah.
Now, is that, does that take into consideration construction or the redevelopment of, of property? So with that 40 or the 30-day limit?
Right. So a part of this touches on section 10.6.060.010B. And now this section may answer some of your questions. So I'm just going to read it verbatim for you all. Intermodal cargo containers. Intermodal cargo containers are allowed in the CG General Commercial District, in the CLI Commercial Light Industrial District, in the CR Commercial Recreational District, subject to the following conditions. Each container must or shall obtain a building permit. Each container shall be screened per the provisions of section 10.6.010.050. Each container shall be painted and maintained in good condition, including being rust-free. So this temporary use really applies to all zones. And this is like, if you wanted, maybe if in a residential zone, you could have it temporarily. This does not supersede section B of this code. So if you got a building permit, you could have it in the general commercial, the commercial light industrial and commercial recreational district, where you may see maybe a heavier industrial use or commercial use.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Well, when you were showing this on the screen earlier, it also mentioned time limits. That was what I was referring to. I think it said something like 30 days, which I thought was too short for, at least for construction. I don't know. They probably use them for other things too, but I think you most commonly find them around construction areas for storing materials in.
Can you clarify that?
Yeah, and typically when we have a construction site and the development of a site, there's an additional permit associated with it. It's called a laydown yard permit. A laydown yard permit is storage of equipment, job trailers, things of that nature. You would probably put one of those intermodal containers. You would place it through a laydown yard permit process. What the temporary use section is to try to get a handle on the multiple cargo containers popping up all over town. There's no permits and these things pop up. They mention temporarily and people end up keeping them for 6 months, 3 years. I mean, this was a provision added, really working with the legal department as well as our code enforcement office. This is a constant issue that we actually have with intermodal containers popping up. They go well past any temporary use because we don't really have defined what a temporary use is. Someone could argue, oh, it's a temporary use, but it's been sitting there for 2 years.
Mhm.
So when it comes to a construction site, you could place one of these through a lay down yard permit. Currently, there's a big development happening out on the port. They have multiple job trailers, connexes, shipping containers, whatever they need to store their equipment. There's, and this isn't really touching on them who went through a process to lay those on the property.
Got it. So if there is a case where someone does want to have one of these for an extended period, there is a route through the lay down site permit that they can pursue that.
A lay down yard would touch on, I'm not sure if it's specific to light industrial zones. I don't think it really calls it out. But yes, if there's a development happening and you need to store equipment, you could get it through a lay down yard permit.
Okay.
There's one of those sitting on the library property in back of the parking lot.
Exactly, for temporary use. Exactly. And it's the
Is that
same.
for the painter?
It is actually for some overflow of the library's equipment. We are mindful of that, and we would like to get those moving as quickly as we can as well. In all honesty, yes, very aware.
The time for public comment is over. So we're just doing our thing up here right now.
But to answer that question, yes, it would pertain to private property.
I personally don't see a reason to extend it beyond 30 days or allow for a year. It seems like there's a route for people to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
This
Option.
Yeah, this kind of helps people not have container yards for a yard. All right, any other thoughts or questions from anybody? If anyone cares to make a recommendation, it's on page 35 of the packet. Staff recommendation would be one of those things if someone cares to make a motion. All right, I move to approve staff's recommendation, move to recommend to the city council the approval of zoning ordinance amendment 108-23, adopting amendments and findings attached herein. May I please have a second?
Second.
Thank you. That motion has been approved and seconded. All in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. And now we'll vote on that. All in favor of, excuse me. How do I word this again, Paula? Yeah, we'll get to that second, right? All right. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, that being said, we'll move on to the second hearing here, which I think is what most people are here for. Zoning ordinance amendment 109-23, City of the Dalles, approval to change sections of the Dalles Municipal Code, Chapter 10.12, recreational vehicle parks. These proposed code changes include removing RV parks from residential zoning districts, updating RV park application review process, and altering RV design standards. This is the same type of public hearing, so I will not repeat the rules for this. However, I will go back and ask, have any members of the commission had any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, or bias which would prevent you from rendering an impartial decision on this matter?
No.
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 Maria? No. Okay. No from Maria. Does anyone in the audience wish to challenge the qualifications of any members of this commission? No. Okay. The public hearing is now open. May we please have the staff report?
No problem. Just a moment before I can get my screen shared here. All right, today we're talking about the zoning ordinance amendment 109-23. This is proposing to change sections of the Dallas Municipal Code, Chapter 10.12, recreational vehicle parks. So these proposed code changes include removing RV parks from residential zoning districts, updating RV park application review processes, and altering RV park design standards. In addition, we have park operations will be altered. We'll touch on length of stay and our permit revocation process. So to first give a little bit of a background. So since 2016, the Community Development Department has approved 4 RV parks within the city limits, 3 of which were approved since 2022. These approvals were located within their residential zoning districts, or 3 were located in the residential zoning districts. Pursuant to the Dallas Municipal Code, RV parks are processed as a conditional use permit and subject to the standards outlined in Chapter 10.12. Other than the low density residential zone, RV parks may be located in all zoning districts. This is the code as it stands now. On January 5th, 2023, following a series of lengthy and at times divided public hearings for the 3 most recent RV park approvals, the commission requested staff to prepare a future discussion and amendments concerning this chapter. So staff responded to that ask from our planning commission, and we are going to go over some of the proposed amendments. We did get some comments on this application. So we had 43 calls into the Community Development Department. These were calls pertaining to, questions about how this would affect their property. There was a ballot measure 56 notice, and this ballot measure 56 notice was to everyone in the high density and the medium density residential zoning district. Now, we are required as a city to notice people in these districts because there may be a negative impact on their property values. And that's because we are removing a conditional use for that zone that they're in. So we're removing the ability to have an RV park in the residential zone. That's why they're all noticed. We had 3 community member comments. One was in favor of the proposed amendments. The other was not in favor of having RV parks in industrial zones. And the other has been provided in your packet. We did receive comment from the Department of Land Conservation and Development, and I'll go over those comments towards the end of the presentation. So a couple of proposed amendments for zoning is that it would be removed from residential zones. It would be permitted outright in the general commercial, recreational commercial, and commercial light industrial and industrial zones. Some of the review processes that would change is that, recreational vehicle park applications could be reviewed with a site plan review application. And just as a reminder, site plan review applications, unless elevated, would not need to be heard by the Planning Commission. So these are applications that are administrative. They do have community notices, but it does not go towards the Planning Commission, and staff renders a staff report, a notice of decision, things like that. However, any recreational vehicle park application requesting stays of longer than 1 year is proposed to be processed as a conditional use permit. In addition, we will be requiring folks to have an operational plan, and these amendments include having an on-site park host, altering the hours of operation and quiet hours, talking about outside storage and noise, and this language that we got for the operational plan mirrors language that's in our conditional use permit applications. Okay. So some of the proposed development standards are quite lengthy, and so I'm gonna try to summarize it all in a cohesive way for you all. So the proposed amendments are going to need to follow all of the local laws and regulations and the Oregon and the ORS state statutes and all other applicable standards. They will not be allowed to be in hazardous areas. So these areas are like geohazard zones, wetlands, floodplains, things of that nature. And they'd be prohibited, and also those 100-year floodplain stream corridors and wetlands. This would help mitigate the impact of environmentally sensitive areas. It touches on the park building setbacks. This would just be following what the underlying zone setbacks would be. It touches on park spacing requirements, access requirements, screening requirements, and that goes off of our existing screening requirements as outlined in 10.11.050. Surfacing requirements, really clearly outlining what needs to be paved in an RV park. And it also is increasing the minimum parking requirement from 0.5 spaces per RV space to it's increasing it from 0.15 RV space to 0.5 RV spaces minimum per RV space. And Paula, I believe, oh, thank you. It's clearly defined requirements for pedestrian circulation and connection to the city sidewalk system. It is defining landscaping requirements with the addition of a shade tree requirement. It also touches on lighting and refuse collection on the site, or garbage collection. So some of the proposed park operations is that all RV parks must comply with these standards. So keep an orderly appearance and remain free of litter, junk, and refuge or garbage. It would need to have an on-site host. So each RV park must provide at least one RV park host available 24/7 for maintenance, security, and enforcement purposes. Host contact information must be conspicuously displayed throughout this park. Each RV park must establish and display operational hours and quiet hours. All RV check-in and check-out times may not occur within the designated quiet hours. There shall be no outside storage of materials or equipment belonging to the park or to any of the guests. And all noise impacts should be consistent with section 5.08020. And the reason why we have referenced another section is that it clearly breaks down what a noise impact would be that they need to mitigate. And then we're also, the use of external generators are prohibited. So we did define our revocation process. So basically the director of the community development department may go forward to planning commission to revoke a previously approved RV park when the following has occurred. So either they fail to meet conditions of their site plan review application. So typically in a site plan review application, there is a notice of decision. And this notice of decision typically outlines it's like criterion that needs to be met prior to formal approval. So that's what it's talking about in those conditions there. Failure to build according to plans. So they submit plans, they don't build how they show them as approved, the permit could be revoked, or they include erroneous information. So the city may have issued the permit on the basis of erroneous or misleading information or a material misrepresentation. So, and also outlines, what the steps would be in a case where that occurred. So looking at our comprehensive plan, like I mentioned in the previous presentation, we look to make sure that all of our code amendments comply with our comprehensive plan. So the first is citizen involvement. And we did submit, as I spoke about earlier, a ballot measure 56. In addition, the notice of public hearing was sent to all local news media, Wasco County Planning, and posted on the city's website. Additionally, a notice of the proposed amendments was submitted to the Department of Land Conservation and Development. So it met, goal 1 for citizen involvement since it followed those noticing requirements. So goal 2 is land use planning. And, the proposed amendment implementation process is consistent with legislative application processes outlined in the Dallas Municipal Code and follows the noticing requirements. So these amendments will remove RV parks as conditional uses in some of these zones. So that will, so by removing it as a conditional use, it's going to be reviewed as a site plan review if there's no long-term stays, which allows us to make more administrative decisions, and it'll reduce the need for planning commission to review all proposals. So these amendments are hoping to help streamline the planning process and reduce delays in obtaining development approvals by not having every single RV permit go through a conditional use application. So goal 5 is open spaces, scenic and historic areas, and natural resources. So one of the reasons why we're touching on that today is that the proposed amendments require that no RV parks or park buildings may be located within a 100-year floodplain, stream corridor, or wetland. This criterion will help mitigate the impact on environmentally sensitive areas and preserve natural and recreational values of our waterways. In addition, the goal 9 is our economic development. And, we are streamlining this with our planning processes, and we're hoping to not have delay when obtaining a approved site plan review application. So it spurs economic development by making the application process more streamlined and less ambiguous. So in addition, we take a look at applicable state statutes. So this was brought, so we provided this in the staff report. I'm going to kind of talk about what this Oregon state statute states. So states that a state agency or a local government may not prohibit the placement or occupancy of a recreational vehicle or impose any limit on the length of occupancy of a recreational vehicle as a residential dwelling solely on the grounds that the occupancy is in a recreational vehicle, or if the recreational vehicle is located in a manufactured dwelling park, mobile home park, or recreational vehicle park, occupied as a residential dwelling, and lawfully connected to water and electrical supply systems and a sewage disposal system, or is on a lot or parcel with a manufactured dwelling or single-family dwelling that is uninhabitable due to damages from natural disasters, earthquakes, flooding, or storms, until no later than the date below. Now, that secondary section B doesn't really apply to this RV park standards, but section A does. Now, originally when staff, is required to give all proposed amendments to DCLD, or the Department of, the Department of Land Conservation and Development. Yeah, okay. So we're required to give notice to them, and they got back with a pretty detailed letter looking at some of these amendments that we're proposing. And so basically they have some concerns about really about how we are limiting long-term stays or requiring long-term stays to be approved as a conditional use permit. And they talk about how, with this ORS statute, we need to make sure that if we are creating code that recognizes RVs as a dwelling, then we need to have clear and objective standards. Basically, staff needs to take a look at the standards that are proposed tonight and ensure that we provide clear and objective standards if it is considered a residential dwelling as it's defined in state ORS 197-493, or we make amendments to our code so that the proposed RV parks are not considered residential dwellings. So as it states in this state statute, there's 3 things that an RV needs to be considered a residence. That is located in a manufactured dwelling park, mobile home park, or recreational vehicle park, which we are talking about today, occupied as a residential dwelling, and lawfully connected to water and electrical supply systems and a sewage disposal system. So staff is recommending that we amend some of the proposals today to better align with this state statute. So one of these amendments would be to strike all requirements for RVs to be connected to like the city sewer system. Therefore, if we strike it from the code, or what I mean, prohibit RVs to connect to the city sewer system, then essentially it wouldn't be considered a dwelling as defined in the state code here. We would also remove all references to long-term stays. So in the reporting requirement for our code, it would remove the long-term stays entirely. And then we wouldn't really be touching on the residential nature of the RV park. And in addition, we would amend 10-12-010 to propose a statement to reflect the city's intent for the Dallas Municipal Code 1012 to allow and regulate RV parks offering short-term stays. So when we originally created some of these code amendments, we were thinking that it was going to be more of a commercial venture. We were not looking into like a long-term housing lens. And so DCLD brought that to our attention. And this is, our hope to mitigate some of those concerns. This is a relatively new code section from the state. And so there's definitely a lot to learn and take in from this. But this is our best, this is a option that the Planning Commission could consider this evening. You have anything else to add, Josh?
Yeah, as Kayla mentioned, this standard here, relatively new. The state looks at RVs that are located in RV parks. If they're hooked up to utilities, we have to treat them as dwellings. So therefore, as she mentioned, we went through this, creating what we thought was more of a commercially based project, or commercially based product, if you will. One of the reasons we were kind of steering away from the housing lens side of things, removing it from a residential zone, treating it as, a business venture. But the state would claim that the fact that these utilities, each space can be hooked up to all of those utilities that are mentioned, an individual could in fact live in them. So therefore, we would not have the authority to regulate certain things about the RV park. And basically, we would have to look at RV parks through more of a housing development lens. So when looking at it through a housing development lens, they had some concerns, as you can see in the handouts that we provided with you, maybe some red flags that they see that don't comply with housing standards. So therefore we discussed it today pretty thoroughly. And as mentioned, I think Chair Cornett may be able to reference it as well. There are 3 changes that could possibly be made to this that would allow this to still be stuck in like the commercial lens of things. Ultimately, if we allow each individual space to be hooked up to utilities, we have to treat it as a dwelling. That's what the state requirement is. So I think.
How does this affect the, I think 2 or 3 RV parks that we've approved over the past couple of years?
So these standards would be applied towards all new development.
Okay, so that doesn't change anything that's going in now.
Yeah, they already received approval from us, so yeah, they develop, then they're there. Wait, I can't. Oh. No, but I can read it. Okay. I can read staff recommendation as well. Just a moment. So staff has 3 options. So we recommend you could move to recommend to City Council the approval of zoning ordinance amendment 109-23, adopting amendments and findings attached herein. That would be with no proposed changes. Staff recommendation is to move to recommend to City Council the approval of a modified zoning ordinance amendment 109-23 after adopting any changed amendments or finding discussed at the regular July 20th, 2023 Planning Commission. And these proposed amendments are to strike all sewer from the Dallas Municipal Code 10-12-015L, remove all references of long-term stays, amend the Dallas Municipal Code 10-12-010 purpose statement to reflect the city's intent for the Dallas Municipal Code 10-12 to allow and regulate RV parks offering short-term stays. And then the third option is to decline adoption and provide additional direction. And that concludes the staff report.
Thank you. If you don't mind, if it's okay, I'm just going to kind of summarize that in the way. So I met with staff prior to the meeting because this ORS 197.493 letter was received how long ago?
Well, the most recent version was today.
Okay, so today. So this is new information. Staff and I met prior to the meeting they kind of just let me know that they received this. This becomes quite a talking point and is going to cause more conversation, which is good, for what we're deciding on here. So I'm just going to kind of give like a macro overview of where we're at before this specific staff report, and then where the staff report leads us. So this whole discussion was started with the idea that we as the commission decided that RV parks, we needed to do something about it. We didn't want them in residential zones. We wanted to put a few other caveats on them and conditions and things like that. We made our recommendations. Those are the things that you see in red, the changes. We received this today, which causes us to realize that there are certain conditions, A, B, and C of section A, that says if an RV park is here, this thing, if an RV is in one of these places or subject to one of these conditions, it becomes a home, it becomes a long-term residence. This causes an issue. We have some things outlined that make them technically not residences. They become short-term stays. But that's kind of where we're at now. So next we'll hear public comment. And we're going to kind of continue to digest this and just see how it goes. But this certainly, it's not as straightforward as we all thought it was. We know that now.
Yeah.
I'm going to take 90 seconds and use the restroom. That way we can dive into this uninterrupted. Yeah. Just let me do that. Okay, back in action. Okay. All right. Does anyone wish to testify in favor of the application? Now, just to clarify, this favor and opposed to the application, use your best judgment on where that's going to be, because I know that where we're at right now in this is kind of fluid. So we'll just take this time for public comment. Come on up. When you have a seat, state your name and record for the address. Please be as concise as possible. There will be a 5-minute limit. Please, yes.
My name is Susan Inman and I live at 1010 Pomona Street. I'm under the understanding that an RV park has already been approved just a few blocks from where I live.
Yes.
All right. I would ask then, how many units?
9, right?
I think it was 9. Yeah.
Are we talking about the one on West 10th?
I just heard that it's going where an old church used to be.
Oh, that's Heritage Loop. How many? 25.
One.
Your proposal then in a length of stay,
Mhm.
what is the length of stay going to be?
Well, that's what we're here to discuss. The difference is we've determined that short term equals 30 days or less. Long term is more than 30 days.
Up to permanent residency?
That's just we're just describing the definition.
Okay. And this is going to be along with a manager who's controlling the operations of the park?
Yes, that was,
Drug enforcement?
well, it's within the city of the Dalles, so it's managed by a park host, and then it's within the city of the Dalles.
We all know what the Chenoweth RV park is like and what goes on there.
I
And
don't.
we all know what goes up the mountain on the east side of town. It's a drug neighborhood. Open in front of everybody. Everybody knows it.
Mhm.
I don't want that in my neighborhood. And you're proposing to change the value of my property, perhaps my property taxes, and quite a bundle of things that are going to affect the house that I own and have lived in for 28 years.
So I think I can give, we've had, so what we're doing here today, we've had multiple RV parks come to us, and we've reviewed, and what we're trying to do is take a look at possibly changing the zoning for the future for RV parks to be in residential areas, because they already more or less can be in residential areas. So we're trying to change that. We weren't able to change that previously. So what it says to, change the property taxes So that's gonna, you know, if you bought a piece of land, you wouldn't be able to develop an RV park in that residential area. So what we're doing is we're changing the zoning
So that what an RV park can come in,
so they cannot come in.
so they cannot, but you've already approved one for my neighborhood.
Right, because I mean, when we're going through our decisions, we have to have a clear cut reason to decline it. Otherwise, it's just going to keep on going up to the next level to where it gets up to LUBA, and then we have to approve it.
So there's nothing I can do about the one that's been approved.
No,
No.
that one's already completed.
How come I just got a notice about all the zoning and changes and everything? And yet I never got a notice that there was a proposed public RV park coming to my neighborhood.
May I? Okay, so that RV park that's happening on Heritage Loop, they give notice to property owners within
300 feet.
300 feet of the site. So you are outside of that 300 feet, so you did not receive notice.
Right, but it's going to affect my house anyhow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think it might be worth noting that the Chenoweth park that she was referring to was came in years ago before that was even inside the city limits. So it's just kind of grandfathered in, and there was no requirement for a park host or anything like that.
Yeah. I just want to reiterate, because that specific public comment, it's worth saying again, as of right now, RV parks are allowed anywhere in the city. Green light, there's nothing we could do about it. The reason that we're here and the reason we're doing all these things is because we don't feel that that is the way that it should be. And we're making these changes now. There's nothing we can do about the ones that have already been put in, the ones that have already been approved. But because they were approved and because we received such public comment and, personal consideration as well, we're moving forward with making these changes. So that's why we're here today. Next person, please. Okay, I know you've done this 3 times, or this will be the 3rd time, but please state your name and
Green,
an address for the record.
3038 Old Dufa Road. And do we have, who sets the rules on the sizes or the year that can go into that? Is it only going to be the park owner, or will you have, like I've noticed down on this end of town, we've got a lot of the old motorhomes coming in, like are the homeless from Portland.
Yep.
Is
So
there going to be a certain regulations that the year that's going to go into those, or?
yes, so we determine those, and we determine that built by date or that manufacturer date. And for the few RV parks that we have approved in the past 6 to 12 months or whatever it is, we have also established those as conditions of approval. And I think it's like 20 years. They can't be more than 20 years old from the time that they basically apply for their lease to stay at the RV park.
A lot of parks around are setting up those rules where I've called before about taking a trailer in, and they'll say, I think it's like 10 years, maybe 10 or even 15. It's really a lot newer than that. So,
Yeah, and I'm just going from memory. It may be less than 20 years. I can't remember.
and is there a certain size, like 3, 10?
No.
There's no size, because like out in our area, we've got some homes that have 3 trailers out there that have folks living in them.
Yeah, that's a different deal.
That's just, and that's on private property. So that doesn't pertain to this. You're not calling that a
No, I don't think that should be happening, but
RV home or something.
yeah. Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Right, 1012 East 10th Street. Just, has there been consideration around limiting the number of units that can be on one space? Has that been defined? Perhaps you have a trailer with a truck and a camper on the back, so things of that nature. Also, in terms of timing, it sounds like we've gotten rid of the long-term definition. Has there been consideration around loopholes for people leaving and returning within a certain period of time to the same spot or anything like that? Does anything like that need to be considered?
Something like that may be considered, and it's something that we have discussed in previous approvals of applications for RV parks. We say that, it's kind of irrelevant now, but if someone is to be there, yes, they can be at that RV space for up to a year, but then they have to move a spot to make sure that thing runs every year, basically apply for a new lease space.
Okay.
So I would imagine that with this 30-day limit that's being discussed, that something similar would happen. And regardless, the 30-day limit's a 30-day limit. That 30-day space is for that 30-day window is for that space specifically. Once that 30 days up, they have to move spaces, whether it be 1 down or 10 down or to a completely different RV park. Yeah,
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, please.
Fred Trujillo. I live at 5100 Woodworth, Parkdale. And I own property there in front of Ilo Inn. And I want to know if it's going to affect that property.
Would it affect that property?
Well, so thinking about the Shiloh Inn, it is right on the Columbia River. So we need to look at the geological constraints or if it's in a wetland or stream corridor. Because if it is, then an RV park may be prohibited to be sited there, but it would take a little bit more investigation to look at your specific site, and I'd be happy to go through that with you.
I think there's one down the street, isn't it?
That would be the in lieu site, and that's the federal government and the Bureau of Indian Affairs that runs that. So
Right.
we don't have a control over it.
Can't hear you.
Oh, I said the trailer park you're thinking of is the in lieu site where the Indians can set up for their, during the fishing season. So we don't really have any control over that. That's the federal government and the.
Well, there's no decisions on that.
No.
Yeah.
No. You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, anyone else? All right. Does anyone wish to testify in opposition to the application? Like I said, I know this is all kind of fluid, so. Yeah.
Name is Bradley Timmons, 1527 East 18th Street, the Dalles. And good evening, and thank you for your time tonight and your volunteer. I generally am supportive of the concept of not allowing the RV parks within the residential zone. But my concern, I wrote a letter, and I'm not going to really expand on it very much, but the taking it out of the conditional use process for industrial zones is my concern. I think you should continue to have review processes for that rather than just having it as an outright use of industrial zones. Industrial zones are related to economic development, and we have a shortage of industrial zones, and for an RV park just to be able to, if they qualify under the standards, be able to choose that land. I don't think that's good planning. I think that's just allowing a hodgepodge development of property. And I think that the Planning Commission should be able to exercise its discretion and to be able to weigh the resources of our community and to look at the industrial zone and what our inventory or supply of that is. And I think that this really would take away from that. So those are my comments, and I'll let you guys grapple with the the apparent headache that you have on these other definitions. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we do have some Zoomers. Is there anyone in the Zoom audience that would care to just make any general comment at all? In favor, not in favor, in opposition, just anything. And if you do have something to say, unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record. Okay, we're going to move on from the Zoomers. Let's see. Based on those comments, public comments, staff, do you have any additional thoughts or anything like that? Okay. Do the commissioners have any questions for staff, specifically based on the comments that we received?
No, I don't have any.
Okay. Does the commission feel like they're ready for deliberations? Okay. Okay. Maria, are you ready for deliberations?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The public hearing is now closed. So I'll start. This is where we're at. And I don't mean to put the cart before the horse, but I'm just going to kind of outline again what we're dealing with here. So we have the changes that we made. They're all good and fine, except we have reached a constraint with how the state defines a residence. If we are to apply the criteria that we set out in previous meetings, not in residential zones specifically, and then, all the other stuff that's in red in your packets. In order for us to move forward with that in an RV park ordinance, we need to strike sewer from proposed Dawes Municipal, our proposed language. We need to strike the sewer connection. We need to remove all references from long-term stays of RV parks. So that means RV parks will only and specifically be short-term stays that is 30 days or less. Okay, that's the only way it works. And then amend purpose statement to reflect city's intent, the purpose statement. So at the top beginning of every zoning type, high density, low density, RV parks, commercial, whatever, there's a purpose statement. So we'd be amending our purpose statement to reflect the city's intent for Dawes Municipal Code 10.12 RV parks to allow and regulate RV parks offering short-term stays exclusively. It's not long-term stay stuff. And this is something we discussed with staff prior. I do agree with the public comment received that RV parks should not be in industrial spaces, or at the very least be allowed for conditional use. But I think if we allow for conditional use, does that interfere at all with the letter that we received and the ordinance referred to there within?
The ballot measure 56?
No.
Chair Cornett?
Yes.
Hi, I believe I can answer that. I think the letter you're referring to is the letter that the city received today from the housing planner at the Department of Land Conservation and Development.
Yes, exactly. ORS 197.493.
Right. And the question that you're asking is whether a conditional use process implemented for the industrial zones can be something that the city can maintain with respect to these RV parks regulating short-term stays. Is that generally your question?
Yes.
Okay. I think I have an opinion on that. I'm happy to share it with you.
Sure, please.
I believe that it would not impact our ability to proceed in conflict with state law if we were to maintain a conditional use process for those RV parks located in industrial zones. The reason why is because they're not considered, well, it becomes a little bit more complicated once we start talking about subjective criteria that we might use. We've carefully crafted the amendments that are in front of you tonight, and as well as, you know, down to the wire, made some last minute changes that we didn't have a chance to include in the agenda packet for tonight's meeting. Those changes were aimed at ensuring compliance with the state standards. If the hope of your question is to result in a changed of that magnitude to these proposed amendments, that would be a much larger discussion. I would say that on balance, it could be argued that there is a method going forward for the city to update its conditional use permit process itself, which is used for a whole number of different application types, not expressly limited to RV parks. If the city were to change its conditional use process to ensure that it implemented clear and objective standards, down the line, then that is something that this commission could revisit for a future code update. But as it stands now, it would not be my recommendation to implement any conditional use process for any RV park siting due to the relatively very recent position from the state of Oregon through the DLCD on how it is going to be considering RV parks and RVs in the context of housing in the future. I would say that that is something that we could navigate. It is down the line, and it is certainly not something that I would recommend that is implemented here tonight as a recommendation to the city's council. I would not personally support that, I don't think. And the reason why is, again, because our current conditional use process contains a few unclear and subjective terms. And the reason I'm using the terms unclear and subjective is to sort of emphasize the policy and the state statute of the state of Oregon connected with clear and objective standards as opposed to unclear and subjective. It is okay in the land use context to have unclear and subjective language. It is not okay in the land use context to have unclear and subjective language with respect to with respect to housing development and residential development. In that very narrow world of residential developments, which RV parks could be construed as, the standards and the procedures need to be clear and objective. And so the reason why we are moving away from a conditional use permit process is to ensure compliance with state law on that issue. But the very long answer is, and this has already been a very long answer, so I apologize. If the city were to amend its conditional use process to ensure that it contained clear and objective standards, then yes, we could, in the future, bring back for this commission's consideration a proposed ordinance update to reflect conditional uses in the industrial zones. But absent that, that is not something that I would recommend here tonight. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
All right. You bet.
Okay, so quick segue off that. So this conditional use thing, we're not that is not advised. So we have these options, change the verbiage that's in there. We can also say that it is no longer allowed in industrial zones, just to solve that issue. And I think it's also important to remember, and this is kind of just to throw a little bit more, one more thing to think about. We really don't have to allow RV parks at all. We could just say no RV parks in the city of the Dalles. And I think given the, I wouldn't go as far as say complexity, but just the considerations, the considerations of how the state is determining long-term residences, the just effort that would have to go into the city to monitor these short-term, now short-term, or what they would have to be short-term stays with RVs. Like, what are we getting ourselves into? Is it worth trying to walk this very thin line to allow RV parks in some very, very restricted zones, which, to piggyback on the public comment, by allowing RV parks in light industrial, just for the sake of argument, general commercial, things like that, we are taking away space that could allow the city to be more vibrant, whether it be manufacturing, just retail space, things like that. So it is important to consider, now that we've talked about this so much, do we really even want RV parks? We can just say no, and we could just move on from this completely.
I got a question on that. So if we did that and, say that we build, something that's built here, like a ball field or some type of event center or anything that's going to be in the city of the Dalles. Now, if they have RV spaces for RV parking, is that going to be, something that we'll look back on and have a conflict?
You mean like long spaces? Like
Well,
basically
just, yeah, like some, when they call RV parking.
Mhm.
So potentially, I mean, if it's going to be utilized as an RV park space where they go to camp and recreate, that's potential. Of course, just parking an RV as part of you go into a store or Fred Meyer such to pick up camping supplies and leave, that wouldn't be like an RV parking space. So
Yeah, just along, at a ball field, having additional space. Yeah, I don't see an extended parking space being considered an RV space. I mean, it's really, if the intent of that RV space is to encourage overnight stay, then you would probably be looking at the realm of an RV park. But it's really, I guess, what's the intent of the long space?
Yeah, because I know that we've seen some things happening with the ball field, the Little League field, and some of the proposals, and some of the plans that I've seen, and they've talked about RV parks and having people park their RVs for the weekend if we had hosted a tournament or anything like that. So I'm just trying to figure out if that would be something that would conflict, because we obviously want to bring people to the Dalles for certain events, but we just don't want to have dwellings and long-term stays and have RVs parking all over the place for dwellings.
Yeah, and just to specify, people can come and park their RV and park it and move it around and be in it and use it. This is specifically about an RV park as a development.
Right.
Now, you could have RV parks from here to the Google Center, but that doesn't mean people are going to use them. People can still park their RV and not use an RV park. So it's not like, I don't think that those two things go hand in hand. You know what I mean? Because you can make RV parks as available as you like and build as many as you like. That doesn't mean people are going to use them.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I think to consider with a full prohibition of RV parks, I mean, having it as an additional option for transient stays when they come through. When there's large events happening in the Dalles, or hotels fill out, short-term rentals fill out. There's options for people that are coming and traveling, going to softball events, going to softball tournaments. They might be looking for additional options and places to stay. So with having a prohibition, might make it put more of a strain on the accommodations that we have here. Just a thought. Also, short-term stays, one thing to think about, short-term stays do collect transient lodging taxes. So just a thought.
Okay.
Yeah, because we have had a few different public comments talking about like an increase in traveling workers with like the medical and the wind guys and all that with folks coming in and out of town. So I don't know that I would necessarily support a complete prohibition, because it feels like it would be limiting our already limited resources.
Okay.
I guess I kind of feel the same way. I don't know if we want to ban them entirely. I think there's probably a place for it, not in the residential areas, obviously, but I think the light industrial area and of course areas that are already zoned tourist commercial seems like it'd be appropriate. And the light industrial areas that we have here are mostly small lots that aren't very attractive for large scale industrial development. So I don't think there'd be real conflict there.
Eddie, do you have any?
Just soaking it all in.
Okay. Okay, so it seems like Maria, any thoughts on complete RV park prohibition or not?
Not at this moment. I'm being really, I'm taking everything and
Okay. So we have these recommendations from staff that, I'm sorry for the ums. We have these recommendations from staff. We can, a lot of new information has come to light about this. We can take more time to think about this and decline adoption and provide additional direction. That additional direction could be to tell staff to say, hey, I've talked about some things, the no sewer, no hookup to utilities. And the two other items that I can't remember until I look at them, remove all references to long-term stays. We could tell staff and say, hey, thank you. We're not ready to make a decision right now. Will you please revisit this code amendment with these things in mind, and we can have something presented to us to work on at some meeting in the future.
That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, I think that would be able to explore more options, to make sure that we make the best decision.
Yeah, I agree with that because I think I think that I think everyone just needs to kind of sleep on this. We have some other things coming up in August that will be taking a lot of our mental power and temporal space as far as meetings go. I don't want to feel like we're rushed into this. I know that we want to we're on a hot streak to fast track this as like the fastest code amendment ever. But it's okay if we don't. We can just tackle it in the winter time when we theoretically may have a little bit of a lighter load, and we can take more time with
I
this.
think we should research more and get some more information,
Okay.
especially with the new stuff from today.
Now.
Don't say
I'm just
that.
kidding.
Okay, so I'm going to move to decline adoption and provide additional direction to staff to have a closer look at this code amendment, given the letter that you received this morning regarding ORS 197.493, with considerations of focusing on this being exclusively short-term stay. We're just going to discuss industrial zone or not later also. I kind of feel like I don't want to open the door to conditional review. Let's just discuss that later as well. I got an idea. Let's see how much of a reduction in available land use this is if we keep industrial in it and if we remove industrial. Like if it cuts it in half, that may be something to think about, but does that make sense?
Slightly. I mean, when we're looking at industrial, we're looking at the largest parcels of land within the city, and we don't have a sizing requirement of how much space an RV park needs to take up.
Okay.
So I mean, ultimately, if an individual has a 30-acre parcel in the industrial zone and they only want to develop 1 acre of it as an RV park, would you say that all 30 acres is now accounted for? Or would you, I mean, that's something that we deal with on something that we have a buildable lands inventory that we've discussed in the past, an employment buildable lands inventory. Hope to actually have that in front of you. So further discussion on that before the end of the year. And that's when we are really taking a look at our entire inventory of industrial land that's been committed to certain projects, land that's developed, land that's vacant. That is a pretty concise number narrowed down to find out exactly how much vacant land we have in the industrial zone. I don't know if I'm going on a tangent, if that would be helpful to you in any way for us to try to take a look at how that might help your decision making.
I don't think it needs to be, I don't think you need to get into it that much. I'm just going to say now, I think that it is appropriate to keep RV parks out of industrial zones because it does make more logical sense. We need more industry and everything that should be going into industrial zone here. That is what gives the Dalles the potential that it has right now. And I think that creating an opportunity or forcing opportunity to use that industrial zone not in those ways is not wise. It's not a highest and best use.
Yeah. And, also, yeah, we can, I mean, if that would be the direction, we can, take a look at a prohibition in the industrial zone. But I think, there are probably some factors to consider, size possibly. I do know that we have discussed one potential RV park in the past year or so in the industrial zone, and it is on a very complicated lot that you really couldn't build much else. But the individual is thinking that he could probably cram in an RV park. I think it's probably a good plan.
Okay.
And this site specifically has a large pond right in the center of the lot. And it's really the only buildable land is a little strip of green space around that lot. It's zoned industrial. There's no real large scale development you could put on that property. And the prohibition would make it so that individual for sure could not develop that property and probably would have a pretty difficult time finding anything else to develop on. So there are, I think, a couple of those oddities out there that we may want to consider.
Would you just like to use your discretion in how to
State it.
Yeah, I mean, we
use
can,
those?
as staff, yeah, we can take a closer look and, maybe look at some best practices and maybe come up with some suggestions, maybe sizes, size of lots and, just take a look at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's my motion.
Well, that's a
clear.
very long motion.
Could you please actually restate your motion? It's weird.
Yes, so I motion that we decline action now and instruct staff to take back the notes, some of the notes that we made, striking sewer from proposed code, removing all references to long-term stays, consideration of certain types of industrial zoning or zoned areas, amending purpose statement, including but not limited to, and we tackle this at a later date.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
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 All the, okay, so unanimous ayes. Okay, so that wraps up public hearing B, zoning ordinance amendment 109-23. Now we have some resolutions.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we just have a resolution, actually. Okay, resolution number PC 616-23, a resolution of the Planning Commission recommending City Council approval of various minor amendments to the Dalles Municipal Code Title 10, Land Use and Development, and repealing the previous resolution number PC 615-23. May I please have a motion to approve this resolution and a second?
I'll make the motion to approve it.
I'll second.
A motion to approve resolution number PC 616-23 has been made and seconded. All in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are now voting on to pass resolution number PC 616-23. All in favor of this resolution, raise your right hand, say aye.
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 Unanimous ayes. Do we need to do anything with resolution 617-23? Because we're just, right, yeah, because we're not approving it or not approving it. Okay. Staff comments and project updates.
Well, thank you. Kind of a whirlwind of a meeting, so I'll try to keep it short for everyone. We do have some busy meetings coming up. Our next two meetings in August. Thank you for reaching out and filling us in on your availability. And I just want to emphasize availability and attendance going forward. It's really appreciated on our end, and all the work that we put into each meeting. It takes a lot of staff time to prep up for these meetings, so we do appreciate your attendance. Coming up the next two meetings, we will be kicking off our housing needs analysis. This may sound redundant, like I've said it before. I did say it before back in April, but we had to cancel two different meetings. But it's exciting. We are working with MIG Consulting out of Portland, also Johnson Economics, to put this information together. And we're taking this real holistic look at the housing needs of the city of the Dalles. It's very informative. It's pretty interesting, but I'm interested in that kind of stuff. So I hope you enjoy it as well. So those two meetings in August, back to backs, we'll take a good hard look at that. Then following those two meetings, we would take those recommendations, or we would take the information that we have. We have a discussion item that follows with City Council. After that discussion with City Council, we bring that information back to you to go through an adoption process. Then it goes back to City Council. Housing needs analysis is a state required process that we go through, but it's also extremely informative and gives us a better idea of the housing needs, as I mentioned, in our community. There's also, it's looking like we have we might have a couple items coming up with the September meetings as well. So like I said, a couple busy meetings coming up. And just an update, this is kind of outside of the planning realm, but I just wanted to give everyone heads up. The Tony's building, I may have talked about that before, was approved for demolition and abatement, the abatement of hazardous material. That abatement started today. So the interior of the building, there's a crew out there that's going through and removing the hazardous material inside that building. It should be about a 3-week to month process. And after that, you will start seeing some walls coming down on that building. The completion of that will be done. Right now, we're looking at probably October 31st on Halloween. So after that, the site will be entirely leveled, filled with gravel, packed gravel. We will have a permanent fence that goes up for the time being until we can figure out what will be developed on the site.
Cool.
If we don't know what's going on the site, why fill in the basement? What goes in there might need a basement. They'd have to haul that stuff out again.
That basement is in rough shape. Yeah, it is. Yes. I mean, any development that comes in, whether it's a 1-story or a 4 or 5-story, they will be required to do, structural review of the area that they have. So, yeah, there may be some area, some of it that is pulled back up, some of the gravel that's filled in, or some of the soil that's put in, but it's also a hazard having an open basement like that, open out to the public. It would definitely be a hazard. I've been in the basement multiple times, and it's really, it's in the city's best interest to have that lot entirely filled for the time being. And I think I'll just keep it short tonight, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions on any specific projects, updates you may have.
Good.
All right.
Good. Thank
Thanks.
you. Do we have any commissioner comments or questions?
Nope.
Oh, all good. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Excellent late night work. I do want to point out that I came to this meeting to meet up with this little letter thing that we got with these guys at 4 o'clock. They had already been working on it for most of the day. So these guys really put in pretty much an entire day's work over one piece of paper that we got to push off into some meeting in the future. So thank you. All right, meeting adjourned.
Good night, everyone.
Wait, everyone huddle up. Everyone huddle up. Okay.
Yeah. The recording, hold on.
We shut off the recording.
Yeah, what happened?